If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so excited and honored to have our friend Wendy Gordon from the NRDC on with us today. Wendy is a health and green living expert. She's co-founded Mothers and Others for a Livable Planet with Meryl Streep. She created a green guide with National Geographic, and now she's in charge of the NRDC's green living sites. Welcome back to Green is Good, Wendy Gordon.
Nice to be back. Thank you.
Hey, Wendy, no, at oil at $110 a barrel, there is no greater issue today than transportation and energy efficiency and how we could all move around our great cities around this planet, but save energy and keep the planet as green as possible. So that's why we asked you to come on today, and we're so excited for you to share some of the greater tips of what's going on and what the NRDC is learning, and then sharing with the public at large on how we could all move around more efficiently.
Great. Happy to do so.
So talk a little bit about what's going on with your great website, smartercities.org, and what we've learned since we spoke to you last on how people in both American cities and other cities can get from their home and work and move around their cities without basically draining their bank account.
Yeah, well, actually, NRDC has been hard at work in their Smarter Cities program, studying cities in the United States on how well they size up in terms of their transportation options. So we looked at public transit availability and how much people use it. We considered household automobile, how many cars per household, and again how many miles were driven in any one particular car. And then we also looked at cities' investment in sustainable transportation options. And we came up with this top city list, our Smarter Cities list. We broke it out by population size, and so we came up with 15 cities, small, medium, and large. And it was actually a really fascinating and fun process, and we learned so much about these different cities. Cities is where it's at, and transportation makes up such a big chunk of our energy use. And cities, just like people and households, need to be very mindful of how they use energy and use fuel, and particularly as prices are going up and global warming becomes more of a concern.
So let's start with this. For people who have cars out there, and we want them to be able to get the most bang for their buck, what are some of the better tips that you've picked up along the way for our listeners to move around in their cities that they live in, but also extend the mileage on their cars?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk first, I guess, about how to extend mileage on your own car, your existing car. And I'm assuming that not everybody is going to run out tomorrow to buy one of the new cars, and there are quite a few great new hybrids and electric vehicles, and the automakers are getting very serious about this. So that's definitely an option. But, for most of us, we made an investment in a car just a few years back, and we're not out to buy another one. So there are ways that you can, what they call hypermile, get the most out of your the fuel, and up your fuel efficiency by several miles per gallon. So one of the simplest is to top up your tires, to keep them fully inflated to the proper level, and that actually really helps a lot to improve your fuel economy. Another thing is, and maybe the opposite is true in the wintertime. You want to weigh down your car so that it holds fast on ice. But actually, from a fuel efficiency point of view, you want to keep a light car. So clean out the trunk, all that hockey equipment from the winter, put it in the garage, all that stuff at the top of the, if you have a trunk rack, leave it in the garage. Take it off unless you're going on a long trip, a road trip. The lighter the car, the better the fuel mileage. Another thing, and this one is so counterintuitive, but it makes sense. It's a little like washing, putting dishes dirty in the dishwasher. Don't idle. So if you're stuck in traffic, and a lot of people are, you're wasting most of the energy of your fuel is going to idle. So turn off the car if you're going to be sitting there for more than 3 or 4 minutes. 3 or 4 minutes is not very long, but it saves gas. So turn it off and then turn it back on. That's far better than just sitting there and just spewing gasoline out. But, seriously, probably the smartest thing you can do is just to minimize your driving and think about each trip. Maybe bundle your trip, so your errands on a Saturday, if you're taking the car that day,
Right.
Pick up your kids and go to the store, So, and you know what? Here's a really great one. Plan your trips so that you take only right turns. I know that seems a little silly, but it actually does save, because right turn, right on red, you don't really have to slow down that much. So,
Wendy, I've got to tell you, John was looking at me like, what, are you kidding? Because I do that. I really
you do that. Well,
no,
it's recommended by the EPA. It's not like it's
I did not know.
Just Wendy Gordon's idea.
No, Wendy, I just do it because I got a crick in my neck, and it's hard for me to look left. It really is.
Oh. Well, there you go. You've been saving energy all these
Who
years.
knew?
So, all right, wonderful. So now we got top off your tires, don't idle, bundle your trips. Those are great. Do you find when studies are done, are people really rolling around with tires that are underinflated?
Oh, I bet so.
Yeah.
I don't really know the numbers on that, but how often? When was the last time you put air in tires?
I don't really know.
2 weeks ago. But I will tell you this. I do have a good friend named Paul. He listens to the show, by the way. He's here in Fresno, California. He's in the tire business, an auto repair business.
Okay.
But one of the things he says, really, the one thing that you can do is you can spend $1 to get a tire gauge. And he says, and just check your tires every Saturday, whatever. Yep. Just make sure. He says, when you're running at proper inflation, he says, you don't know how many tires I sell. I'm glad to have the business, but you don't know how many tires I sell just because people run them underinflated. It causes excess wear. So not only are you using more gas, but, really, how often do you want to get a new set of tires if you don't have to?
That's
brilliant.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike.
Yeah.
That is great.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
So now we got the tips for the car owners. How do we get people, how do we motivate, besides $110 a barrel or so, how do we motivate people to get out of their cars and to use public transportation or other methodologies? What's going on with regards to that in green living? And give us some ways that we can motivate people to get out of their cars.
Well, that actually was a lot of the big reason behind our Smarter Cities on transportation. The study that we did on transportation. We wanted to see what different cities were doing in order to encourage people riding the bus or riding other forms of public transportation, using bicycles or walking, and a number of cities. And to your question about what are cities doing to motivate people to to use alternative sources of commuting. A lot of cities are investing in this notion of real streets, complete streets, and walkability, and making sure that there's safe sidewalks and pedestrian friendly zones, so that and they're looking for things like congestion pricing, so that people resist commuting when the alternative becomes more attractive. There are programs all over the city to try to encourage people to try commuting by public transit, just once a week, just to test it out. And I am a living, breathing example. Now, I live in a big city that has lots of public transit, and I do use the subway, but I actually recently flipped to the bus. Now I ride the bus, and I always thought that the bus was not as good as the subway. And I know it's not a great comparison because it's one form of public transportation versus another. But I had this kind of it's less classy or something. I don't know.
You were subway centric.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. But here's the thing that I completely love about it. I sit on the bus for about the same amount of time as I'm riding on the subway, but I'm not underground. I'm in a bus. I can text, I can check email, I can be online, and by the time I get to work, it takes about 30 minutes by bus. And I am completely ready for the workday. I'm all caught up on anything that's come in overnight, and I've been texting away and and commuting.
Your day has really started.
Yeah, and the day has started. So I really appreciate now the bus, which is above ground, and having somebody else do the driving for me. I live in New York, as I said, and we spend on public transportation a whole lot less than a commuter spends on gas. Even if I was taking the exact same trip that they would, I would be paying much, much less. And the hassle, I tell you, more than anything else, fuel efficiency, whatever, it's the hassle, that headache of having to be in your car all by yourself.
You're right.
And driving.
Wendy, speaking of that, I know you live in Manhattan and you work in Manhattan, which is just such an amazing, I'm a native New Yorker, so to me that's just a real winning daily double. But talk a little about, does your family own a car, and how does do you and your family own?
No,
okay.
we own one car.
Okay.
And so right now that means it's divided into among two people, because my husband and I have grown children. But for a while we had two new drivers, and so it was basically I owned a quarter of a car, because we all shared it. And New York has the sort of one of the lowest rates. I think Jersey City may be even lower, but the lowest rate of per household car ownership, and it's well under 1 in both cases. So everywhere else in the country, even a very walkable city with great public transportation, say, for example, San Francisco, you have higher car ownership and higher car use, so vehicle miles traveled. But New York really scores up there, and Jersey City as well, which is just across the river from us, on really, really low rates of car ownership. So, I'm a very proud owner of a half a car.
Gotcha. Okay, I love it. That's wonderful. That's a new way of saying it. And so, if our listeners just joined us now, we've got Wendy Gordon from the NRDC on with us, talking about transportation and how to be more efficient and how to get around your cities. And please look at their great website, which a lot of people don't even know about, smartercities.org, smartercities.org, or nrdc.org/living. Wendy, talk now a little bit about your recent studies with these cities. Talk about the 15 cities or so and what they're doing, what makes them great, and what we can continue to impress upon our leaders of other cities that works in the cities that you've studied, that we need to populate throughout the country and around the world, by the way.
Yeah, no, and that's really what the purpose of these studies are, and we're going to cover other topics as well. In series, but the whole point is to spotlight these leader cities that are no different than any other and face the same kind of challenges, but they've gotten creative, and they're offering up these innovations that are not meant to show them off, but to really showcase them so that others will implement the same kind of thing. I'll give you a great example of a city that's to answer your earlier question. What are we doing in order to help shape behavior? So Washington has 111 solar-powered docking stations for 1,100 bikes that they make available for sharing. So let's say you ride your bus into one of these places, and they put the bike depots right alongside a bus stop or a train stop, and then you can pick up your bike and make the last 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to your office.
Wow.
And it's all it's bike share. So you don't actually have to own the bike.
Bike sharing.
Or you could use the depot to store your bike, but it's just really an incredibly cool and successful program. The other thing that DC does, and a lot of cities now are doing this, but they have trip planners that are on your phone. So if you need to get from point X to point Y, you just plug it in, just like Expedia figures out how to fly from one city to another. It tells you exactly what public transit is available to get you from one place to the other.
So it's an app that you could get on your phone?
Indeed, it's very city-specific.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. But so that's a great example. I mean, another one that I really loved, because people often say, well, and I liked these smaller cities that we spotlighted, because they say, well, it's fine, it's easy to provide these alternatives and get people walking into their shopping centers and so forth when they live in a city. That's what makes cities so special. But a lot of people live in fairly rural, more suburban type cities, and And here's a really great example. It's Bremerton, Washington, which has an interesting population. It's far older than many of cities like it, and a surprising number of disabled people. And it's a very hilly, kind of rural or half-rural sort of area, connected to Seattle by ferry. And they have more or less invented a van pool system that gets up these little hills and these tight little driveways and connects people from their remote locations to whatever part of town that they need to get to. And it's all powered. These buses are clean fuel. It's a compressed natural gas. So, and it's just the smarts of the city officials and some concerned, citizens, just saying this is what we need, and how do we address our problem in the most cost-effective and fuel-efficient way.
Interesting.
So I love that example. Others of it, there's just a number of great examples in this, and we like to tell stories at Smarter Living.
All right, so great. So we could all look at some examples from some cities. How do we get more involved? How do we got lots of listeners out there, and everyone now really wants to be, wants windows to step through. I mean, should they just buy a hybrid if they don't live in a city with mass transportation or some transit innovation? What's some of the ways for our listeners to engage now?
As a citizen, you mean?
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think also as a consumer, and they do kind of go together. Depends on kind of what stage in your life you are. Another recent study has shown that, let's say you're looking for a home, you're moving your family or you're moving yourself, and you're a young couple and you're just starting out and you want to know where's the best place to live.
Right.
Actually, probably the smartest decision you can make is to buy a home near a public transportation hub. So you can live out in the suburbs, you can live in a neighboring town of a city, but think long and hard about how close you are. Can you walk to, or can you, in a short drive, can you get to a transportation port that will bring you down into the city, particularly if that's where you're going to be working. So that, more than what car you buy
Right.
or what changes you make in the home that you buy, location, and in this case it matters as much for your waste, your costs, and how much pollution you give off. So I think that's a big thing you can do. You can do. You can lead. Your city council is a great place to go to those meetings and get talking about how to make your town more walkable.
Right.
How to. I have a good friend who she lives out on Long Island in a beautiful, quaint old town, and you'd think that they would be investing in keeping their streets vibrant for pedestrians and for shop owners, but they want to clear the streets of pedestrians and put in parking, and it's a crazy time. But putting it into dollars and cents for folks.
Right.
And getting them thinking about what's this going to mean for my business. And there have been studies to show that businesses really benefit from street walking traffic.
Right.
So just get involved. They are eager to hear from people. This meaning the city councils and your mayor. Mayors have their ears open to what concerns people. And another benefit of living in a place where it's easy to walk to and do your shopping on foot
Right.
or on bike is that obesity rates are much lower, and this country faces serious health-related problems because we're all sedentary.
Wendy, let's go back. What are the top 5 cities? Who were which cities were the smartest? Name some of the cities so we could celebrate those and inspire others to follow suit here.
Yeah, well, and to find out what they're up to. In the small category,
Yeah.
So that was under 250,000.
Yeah.
I mentioned Bremerton, Washington.
Sure.
There's also Champaign-Urbana, Illinois.
Ah.
And Lincoln, Nebraska, so
Okay.
two Midwest cities,
Right.
and then Yolo, California, which is the Sacramento area.
Sure.
And boy, do they bike. And then in the middle population category, which is 250 to 1 million, so a pretty large array, included Boulder, Longmont. Now, we talk about metro regions in this case. So
Right.
it's Colorado, Boulder, Longmont, Honolulu, Hawaii. That would be a nice place to live regardless. Jersey City, as I mentioned, and then New Haven. It's also a very walkable, bikeable city.
New Haven.
And, otherwise people don't say much about New Haven. That's nice. And then in the large category, Boston, which includes southern New Hampshire, the metro region.
Right.
Chicago, Illinois, New York, Portland, Oregon. Philadelphia is a great, very, very pedestrian-friendly city.
Wow.
San Francisco seems to always top these lists. And then we talked about Washington, D.C.
Wow. So it was pretty East Coast centric there on the larger cities. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think I think historically the problem with the newer cities out west is that they spread them out.
Yep. They were designed for the car.
Yeah, they were designed for exactly. So
Yeah.
no wonder they have transportation problems.
Wendy, we're down to the last 2 minutes, and we love having you back, and you just do a tremendous job over there at the NRDC and everything you're doing with also one of your other great websites, simplesteps.org, smartercities.org. You want to share a little bit about what's in store and what our listeners how they could also access and use the NRDC as a great resource, because it's really truly one of the greatest U.S. resources we have with regards to the environment and to everything that's going on with regards to the green revolution. So we have a couple minutes left, and I want to turn it over to you to talk about how our listeners can get more involved with the NRDC and everything else that's in store.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that opportunity. Actually, just to make very clear, Smarter Living is a new web portal on nrdc.org /living. So nrdc.org /living will take you to Smarter Living.
Okay.
And we're melding in the Simple Steps content. So it'll all appear there. We'll eventually turn the lights out on Simple Steps because it's been a separate site and we want to put it all together. Because NRDC is this great, rich web portal, and so this will be the doorway for people to come through that want consumer-facing content. So we provide for you everything on food and your food choices to health and like chemicals that you come across in your home and your daily life, and we deal with lots of product concerns. We just came out actually with this app, and you can go to the website nrdc.org /living. It's called Label Lookup, and it helps you identify. Well, it helps you decode labels on products. And
wow,
there's
that's wonderful.
A couple hundred labels in this database, and it'll tell you whether you can trust it, whether it means anything significant, whether there's a third-party independent organization verifying it, or whether it's just a word like natural, which really doesn't mean all that much. So we do that on all kinds of products, from paints and so forth. And that's just an example of the kind of, we try to give you the tools, the interactive information that you can take with you and do something about. We try to make those behavior changes easy.
That is so awesome. Well, thank you, Wendy, and we're just so thrilled to have all of you, great leaders from the NRDC. Mike and I, one of our favorite shows ever was when we had John and Patricia Adams on the show.
Oh yeah, with their book.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
They're just simply just wonderful, and just hearing their story, and literally when people say, "Oh, I can't do anything to change the world." It shows you how one couple can work and collaborate with so many people, and the world can literally change.
Yes, well, they are the very best.
Well, Wendy, we're going to have you back on again, and we're just so thankful to you and the NRDC again. And please go to Wendy's great sites. First of all, the NRDC.org is the number one site, but then also smartercities.org and also NRDC.org /living. Wendy Gordon, you're always an inspiration. We thank you for all your great words today of wisdom with regards to transportation. And Wendy Gordon, you are truly living proof that green is good.